Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki शृण्वता स्वकथा कृष्ण पुण्यश्रवण कीर्तनः हृदयन्तस्तोय भद्राणि विधुनोति सुहृत्सताम्. Hare Krishna. We are continuing the discussion from Canto 3, Chapter 22, verse 23. Shatarupa Maharagni Paribarhan Mahadanan Dampatyayo Paryadat Pritya Bhushavasaha Parichadan. Synonyms: Shatarupa, Empress Shatarupa; Maharagni, the Empress; Paribarhan, dowry; Mahadanan, valuable presents; Dampatyayo, Dampatyo, to the bride and groom; Paryadat, gave; Pritya, out of affection; Bhusha, ornaments; Vasaha, clothes; Parichadan, articles for household use. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Abhaycharan Aravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation: Empress Shatarupa lovingly gave most valuable presents suitable for the occasion, such as jewelry, clothes, and household articles, in dowry to the bride and bridegroom. Purport: the custom of giving one's daughter in charity with a dowry is still current in India. The gifts are given according to the position of the father of the bride. Paribarhan Mahadanan means the dowry which must be awarded to the bridegroom at the time of marriage. Here, Mahadanan means greatly valuable gifts befitting the dowry of an empress. The words Bhusha Vasaha, Parichadan also appear here. Bhusha means ornaments, Vasaha means clothing, and Parichadan means various household articles. All things befitting the marriage ceremony of an emperor's daughter were awarded to Kardama Muni, who was until now observing celibacy as a brahmachari. The bride Devahuti was very richly dressed with ornaments and clothing. In this way, Kardama Muni was married with full opulence to a qualified wife and was endowed with the necessary paraphernalia for household life. In the Vedic way of marriage, such a dowry is still given to the bridegroom by the father of the bride. Even in poverty-stricken India, there are marriages where hundreds and thousands of rupees are spent for a dowry. The dowry system is not illegal, as some have tried to prove. The dowry is a gift given to the daughter by the father to show goodwill, and it is compulsory. In rare cases where the father is completely unable to give a dowry, it is enjoined that he must at least give a fruit and a flower. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, God can also be pleased even by a fruit and a flower. When there is financial inability and no question of accumulating a dowry by another means, one can give a fruit and flower for the satisfaction of the bridegroom. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dudhati Swapadantikam Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिन् इति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंदा हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Good morning. So we'll just read the translation once again and then get into some discussion. Translation. Empress Shatarupa lovingly gave most valuable presents suitable for the occasion, such as jewelry, clothes, and household articles, in dowry to the bride and bridegroom. For most of us who have grown up in last few decades in India, dowry is such a huge, controversial, if not even a taboo topic, for as because of also some of the points that Prabhupada mentioned, where there are a lot of stories we have kind of heard, and also in the cultural phenomenon of movies and in other ways also we have also seen the ill effects that the dowry has kind of caused. And I was just thinking that is dowry in itself a kind of a negative phenomenon, which Srila Prabhupada basically says it is not an illegal thing. Here, Prabhupada was very emphatic in his statement where he said, the dowry system is not illegal, as some have tried to prove. So if the dowry in itself is not some kind of an ill phenomenon or anything, what we usually see is something, the controversy happens if for the majority of the crowd that kind of wants to um, not kind of follow that thing, but then it is kind of implied or enforced upon them, then it kind of is something which is not aligned with the value system of the majority or section of the society, but it's kind of in some way or the other is kind of imposed. Then we usually see that it becomes like in a controversy. But in this case, one thing that was kind of, if we kind of look deep, it not just about the dowry or anything. Most of the topics are basically made controversial. Like by itself, it might not be unless it is like which are um, by itself the activity itself is kind of an ill based phenomenon activity. If not that, but if the activity is okay, in most of the cases we observe that topics are made controversial not because the activity itself is wrong, but because of the unjust application of the principle that is underlying of those lies. If we kind of look deep, as Prabhupada is also explaining here, the basic underlying principle of the dowry is again the same sentence that we hear with respect to deity worship or anything, or with respect to just performing of the devotional service. Love is in the details. We hear that if somebody who is really in love, then they make sure that the details are kind of are as refined as possible. So the dowry system, which ended up to a degree for most of us growing up in India, as it is represented in the cultural phenomenon of movies and in the normal discussion, to a degree it became, for lack of better term, like an extortion, where one side of the bride or the bridegroom are kind of trying to extort money. So the system which ended up being like that, if the underlying principle is also in the loving and the details, because what it is when the daughter who is leaving the family, the father or the mother or the family itself, in case if the father and mother are not physically alive, then it's the brothers or the siblings or anybody. They want to make sure that as much comfort is given as in the case of that. And interestingly here, till this point of discussion, anywhere the references that had to be given for specific activity that was performed, either it be getting into the chariot, getting down from the chariot, or entering into the ashram of Kardama Muni, or discussing with the Kardama Muni, or responding back to Kardama Muni, the references interestingly were always given of Swayambhu Manu. And I was just looking back in these whole words, this is the first and I think the only reference where the direct references of the specific action is being given, attributed to Empress Shatarupa. So it says Empress Shatarupa lovingly gave most valuable presents, not represented. That's why Manu also goes on to the fact that there was equal opportunity, irrespective of if you're a father or mother. There's certain, in the whole ceremony of marriage, there were certain things that the father was kind of predominantly overseeing, and then there were certain sections that the mother was predominantly overseeing. Even though our conventional present wisdom might say otherwise, but at least that based on the text of Bhagavatam, it's kind of clear that the responsibility was always equal. So as as Empress Shatrupa is giving, she is not just giving these valuable presents just to prove that she is the empress of the whole world, but the underlying principle what she's demonstrating is that my daughter Devahuti who grew up in this luxury of huge palatial buildings and so on and so forth is, and whereas Kardama Muni is till this point was a brahmachari just living in a small ashram, and because he was a brahmachari, there was nothing that he like. It was a simple maintenance for him. But post marriage, there are certain things there, like he didn't had any house setup or any of the things. So everything that was given, either it could be the jewelry, the clothes, or household articles, were a kind of expansion of their love towards their daughter, saying that this is just an expression of their love to make sure that specific details. Okay, this might be something that she needs after she, or some of the things that she wanted from her whole place, like so on and so forth. And unfortunately, what happened with as we kind of see starting from the Swayambhuva Manu, it kind of came as a tradition. And unfortunately, like with every great tradition, or as Krishna basically explains in the Bhagavad Gita, yoga nashtaha. So it's not just about the knowledge, but also with many of the great traditions that we see. We also see in the case of dowry, we also have seen in other instances where something which was kind of might have been started with some great intention, with many of the great traditions, slowly basically lose their charm. And as the principle of showing love, which love is in the details, if you kind of take that as the principle, rather than the activity or the tradition embodying the principle of displaying the following the principle, as it is replaced by the detail of the quantity. But for example, in the case of dowry, as Prabhupada is explaining, it can be somebody, if they want, they can give just the fruit and flower. But as it was replaced by the specific detail of, oh, this is the quantity that I want, this is the amount of the thing that I want. And if you're not giving that, then this marriage is not going to happen. Or if this marriage happens, then these are the troubles that the girl is going to undergo. And like there are a lot of unwanted history that many of us, if not have personally witnessed, but have definitely heard of it, is when the charm of following the principle is replaced with the specific detail of how much quantity is given, then like with many of the great traditions, then the dowry also ended up being like a controversial topic. And one story that comes to my mind, which I actually have heard long time back when I was still I think in my school, was there is this huge marriage that was happening, and then the bride and bridegroom were 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 just in their mandap, just the final moments of actual marriage was happening. And then the bride was actually quite tensed. She was just looking for, where is my mother? My mother is supposed to be with me. My mother, I can't see my mother. And then she's trying to look at her mother. And then as she's just running, just trying to see around the hall, what she sees is her mother is basically running around a cat. And all she's seeing is her mother basically running around a cat across the marriage hall. And she's fully tense. She cannot ask anybody, what is my mother doing. She wants her mother to be by her side, but her mother is busy doing something which the bride doesn't understand anything. And exactly at the moment that the boy was about to tie the knot, her mother finally catches the cat and then puts a huge basket on top of the cat and asks somebody who is the strongest person, come and sit there. And then the mother comes onto the dais, onto the mandap, and then sits besides the bride. And as it happened, the daughter never asked why was the mother doing it, or the mother never basically said anything. Okay, this is what was happening. This was the reason, or like the dialogue never happened post that discussion. And as time moved forward, this bride became the mother and her daughter was getting married. And at this moment, she was peacefully sitting in the mandap, and suddenly she remembers that, oh, we have to pause the wedding now. I have to run around the hall. Somebody please bring a cat. Let loose the cat, and I have to run around the hall. And I'll make sure that exactly at the time the muhurta is to be there, where the boy has to tie the knot. That's when I'm going to catch the cat, put a big basket, call somebody who is the strongest in the whole hall, ask him to sit there, and then I'll come back. So in our head, it became like a tradition, which in reality, what was happening was this cat was creating a mess in the kitchen, where somebody came to the original mother. Somebody came to her and told that, hey, we are trying to do this thing in kitchen. This cat is creating a mess. Can you please take care of her? And then at that moment, she was not able to find anybody else whom she could just hand over that responsibility. So she was just running around. And finally, it just so happened that that was the moment that she was able to catch and then keep the basket on. But for this girl, because she didn't had the knowledge of the discussion that needed to happen with her mother, in her head, it is a family tradition that has to happen anytime a girl is getting married in her family. And that's what she basically then told to her daughter, because as she was running around, then everybody started asking her, what are you doing? You're just sitting peacefully there. Why do you want to bring a cat? Why are you running around behind a cat? Then she went on to explain that, oh, this is the because at this point the mother is physically not alive. So this girl, who was at one point was the bride, now became the mother. She said, oh, this is the family tradition of our family. When I was getting married, my mother was running around the whole hall, making sure, running behind the cat, and caught the cat. And because of that tradition, all of my married life was so peaceful. I got a nice husband, I got nice children, whole of my life was peaceful. And for me, I want the same thing to happen for my daughter. So for her, this whole activity of actually making kind of some creating some peace in the kitchen for the cooks became the cause of the peace in her life, became the cause of the tradition that she kind of continued through her lineage. So similarly here, we see that it's I think also a big point that across humanity also, if you kind of just look at it, of the letter of the law versus the spirit of the law, it's always a question that we need to be asking: is it that I'm following the letter of the law, or is it that I'm following the spirit of the law? Are my actions derived based on the letter of the law, or are my actions derived based on the spirit of the law? In the case of daughter, she didn't, she never asked what was the spirit of the action that the mother was doing. All she took was, okay, my mother was running around. And because my mother was running around, then at this particular instance, my mother caught the cat, kept the lid, asked somebody else to sand. And for her, it's interesting, her peaceful marriage was not attributed to the qualities of the husband. Her children growing up nicely, becoming well meaning citizens, were not also attributed to the qualities that they have. They were also, interestingly, they were not also attributed to our own specific qualities that, oh, I have such a good husband because I'm a good wife. I have such a great children because my responsibilities that I needed to do as a mother, I've fulfilled to the greatest degree that I could. She didn't attribute anything that was peaceful and successful in her life to anything else, nor to the upbringing that she got to her mother or anything. But she, at this point, she just attributed the whole of everything that happened in her life to that one just activity, that my mother did this, so everything became nice. And I have to do this so that my daughter's life will be peaceful. So interestingly, and as Prabhupada is also suggesting, so it's the letter of the law versus the spirit of the law. So, and Prabhupada, as he's suggesting, that Prabhupada is saying that there is no running away from the aspect of the dowry. The dowry is a gift given to the daughter by the father to show goodwill, and it is compulsory. In rare cases where the father is completely unable to give the dowry, it is enjoined that he must at least give a fruit and a flower. If you kind of read the same sentence with respect to the letter of the law versus the spirit of the law, The spirit of the law is that the dowry is representing the love, which is the spirit of the whole dowry concept is the love. So there is no alternative for the spirit of the law, which means there is no alternative for the father or the family to kind of make sure that the love that they are trying to reciprocate or show to the daughter, there is no running away from that aspect. There is no alternative that can be kind of taken that, oh, I don't have to give dowry because there is this once she's married, she no longer part of our family. We are our bodies. So there is no alternative for the spirit of the law, but there are definitely alternatives for the letter of the law. And as Prabhupada is suggesting here, if not for anything, at least fruit and a flower. And Prabhupada is even going to the point of stating that, as stated in Bhagavad Gita, God can also be pleased even by a fruit and flower. So it's an instruction also in some ways that there's if Krishna himself, who is Vibhu, who is the controller of everything, who is the creator of everything, if he is being satisfied by, for lack of better term, such meager physical things, what excuse do any of us have to not be satisfied just by fruit and flower, provided the underlying spirit of the law or the underlying principle of love is being kind of conveyed. And I was just looking at just the definition of how, like, we understand letter of the law is basically what is, if I say that when you're taking a left turn, always give the indicator. So that's the letter of the law, that this is the action that I have to perform. So I was just looking, we understand that the letter of the law is what is basically there in the books, or what is usually predominantly said. Or in the case of this daughter and mother, the letter of the law was catch the cat, bring the cat, run around the cat, catch the cat, keep the basket, ask somebody to stand. So it was the physical action or the physical action that can be performed that can be kind of understood as the letter of the law. But I was just trying to understand what is usually understood as the spirit of the law. And interestingly, the spirit is translated as the perceived intention of the law. Because in most of the cases, once the law is made, as the generations pass, so as in the case of the dowry, if you understand that Swayambhu Manu and Mother Shatarupa were the first father and mother duo who were kind of doing the whole marriage, because this is the first, just the part of beginning of creation. And then it was like Swayambhu Manu had two other children, and then Mother Devati was like the daughter that was getting married. So if you kind of understand, the dowry system was kind of started by them, because everything that was happening at the beginning of creation was through them. And also, I think in the Canto 4, there is also this other principles that Swayambhu Manu was starting were also kind of given. Now, if we look at it from this standpoint, there's no way for any of us to physically go back and ask Swayambhu Manu and Mother Shatarupa to ask that, hey, can you please tell us the intention of the law? All we are kind of at this point know is, okay, I think this is what they were trying to do. So it's a perceived intention that I'm thinking of either of the law. It could be of this case, or even in other cases, some of the things that in the normal law concepts, somebody else might have written the law. And for most of the general population, some of these laws that are kind of established might be 100, 200 years old. So there's no way that you can basically go back and ask the person, hey, you can't go back, you can't find out a time machine at this point and go back 200 years and ask the person, hey, what is the intention that you wrote this law? So it's always the spirit of the law is usually translated as the perceived intention of the law. So in that case, so if it is a perceived intention of the law, so how are we going to kind of understand what was the perceived intention? Either it could be the case of Swayambhu Manu, or it could be the case of what some of the principles that our acharyas have set up, or Srila Prabhupada have set up, or it could be any of the things. We are part of an organization. The organization kind of has certain rules. So how do we understand what is the perceived intention of any of the specific rules or the restrictions or any of the laws that are being usually set up? Is because as at least we are understanding that it's better to be kind of understand, even if we are following the letter of the law, it's always better to align ourselves to the specific intention or the principle behind the law rather than, hey, I don't care about what the spirit of the law says. This is the letter of the law. This is the letter of the written statements that are there. So this is what I'm going to follow. And it also, one more example that I wanted to kind of just quote, alienating, kind of explaining why is it important to kind of understand the principle is, if you just look at the previous verse where Kardama Muni was saying in the verse 19, that he says, therefore, I shall accept this chaste girl as my wife on the condition that after she bears semen from my body, I shall accept the life of devotional service accepted by the most perfect human beings. That process was described by Lord Vishnu. It is free from envy. And this verse can be clearly misunderstood as saying that once I beget children, as what Kardama Muni is saying, once I beget the children, then I'm going to renounce her and start the life of devotional service. And this is the process that Lord Vishnu has described. If you are kind of, it's a clear misunderstanding, misapplication of what Kardama Muni is saying, indicating just this sentence of once I beget children, then I'm going to renounce and start the life of devotional service, indicates that Grihastha life or begetting children are not part of devotional service. And in the last 50 years, we have seen this is a dangerous, slippery path that that has created serious destruction. And just kind of without understanding the actual principle, what Kardama Muni is saying, if we just go by just the letter, and even in that case of letter, it is because unless you understand the principle or the spirit of what the letter is trying to say, it is very easy to kind of misapply even the specific letter that what is available in front of you. Even if you want to kind of say that, okay, this is what I'm going to follow, unless I understand the specific principle or the specific spirit, it is almost possible, or it is almost impossible to kind of not follow the exact thing that is kind of being mentioned, because all of us come with our own baggages of our own understandings and our own kind of circumstances. And for me, I might be understanding, I might be reading the letter in a different way than, let us say, my brother might be reading, because even though we are part of the same family, we are kind of coming with our own baggage, coming with our own specific consciousness. And fortunately for us, Srila Prabhupada clearly explains in the same verse that he first of all clearly explains the role of Grihastha ashram and the role of begetting children. And he goes on to explain about Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, how, and all of that. And he also explains that Kardama Muni here is explaining about the Paramahamsa stage of Sannyasa ashram. We all understand that there are multiple stages in Sannyasa ashram, and Paramahamsa stage is usually understood as the highest stage of Sannyasa ashram, and that is the ashrama, that is the sannyas ashram, where it is usually said that somebody who is attained the Paramahamsa stage of sannyas ashram is free from envy. So what Kardama Muni is saying is not saying that because I'm married, now I'm performing devotional service as brahmachari. When I get married and when I'm having children, I'm not performing devotional service. Once I renounce this marriage, then I'm performing devotional service. He's not categorizing that. All he's saying is that uh, I take this as a responsibility, and once I'm fulfilling this responsibility, this is what I want to perform. This is the stage that I want to finally achieve. So the saving grace, like in the case of for us with the Srila Prabhupada, and also not saving grace that happened in the case of the daughter and the mother, was having that discussion and having that connection. At some point, this was the new kind of lineage, for example, that we want to kind of use the term, that she's trying to create from her, because she has seen, but she never had that connection to her mother asking what was the thing. And for us, the perceived intention of the law can only be understood through the grace of parampara, as also Krishna explains that in that verse, how Srila Prabhupada translate the verse is, in the course of time, the succession was broken, and therefore the science as it is appears to be lost. So the saving grace is always our connection to the parampara. The parampara, we might say that I just want to be connected to the parampara of the past, but the saving grace is having that connection to the parampara of the past, to the present, and also making sure that we are still connected to the parampara of the future, because many of us, in our own roles as fathers and mothers and teachers and so on and so forth, are also connection to the same parampara, to whatever subordinates that we have. So even in the darkest of the times, there will always be some connection of hope that we can always connect to. And as long as that we are kind of making sure that the saving grace of parampara is still alive in our lives, then it's mostly possible. It's always possible that we kind of will even in that perceived intention of the law, we'll make sure that it's not our own misconception of the perception that we are having, but it's the actual intention based on which the law has been set up by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or by the acharyas. If we kind of in some examples, is always the saving grace is always the parampara. So I end it here. If there are any corrections or comments, floor is open. If not, I think we can end. Thank you so much. Hope you'll have a great day. वाञ्छा कल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमः। तो कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय, श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय, श्री प्रभुपाद की जय।
Prabhu,
Yes,
Prabhu, sorry, we're coming on me. Prabhu, excellent. I really appreciate your wisdom and your knowledge, the information you gather. Very appreciative. I'm very much connected what you are talking about, and just want to say thank you. Really good.
thank you, bro.
Yes, thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Nice class. I mean, how the what do you call the cat story, right? So I mean, how it changes. So people acts. I mean, as the time passes, we will lose the why that activity was done, or the purpose behind that, and without knowing. So a lot of times, even it can happen even our devotional activities as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, the mood and I mean, yeah, I think Maharaj Rumpad Maharaj gave one seminar in Gita Nagari, and the I mean context of as the time passes or generations passes, right? In the ISKCON, so I mean we lose the Prabhupada's mood, right? So why he was doing what established. I will just take some statements and yes, Prabhupada, but that is very important to understand that the intention or the mood behind that activity.
Especially when you spoke about the spirit of the law,
Yeah.
I think you mentioned this, right? You know, over the period of time, it's lost. And if somebody comes and revives that, it is no more relevant to the situations today. So we feel like, no, that is not true. See, it's not working. So that's where I was very much connected to what you are talking about. You know, when Prabhupada is talking about this is what it is, sometimes I scratch my head. No, it's not relevant now. But that is the spirit of the law, right?
Yeah.
So that's a great point, Prabhu.
Thank you, bro. I'm glad. I was actually scared, but thank you so much. Gives me a lot of confidence.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, bro. Hare Krishna.